Karen Williams strode through the sleek corporate lobby, her stilettos clicking against the polished marble floors. She glanced at her Rolex, frowning at the time. Always late, those incompetent imbeciles in accounting. As she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with a janitor mopping the floors. "Excuse me," Karen snapped, glaring daggers at the man. "Can't you see I'm in a hurry?" The janitor, a middle-aged Hispanic man named Miguel, paused and looked up at her, his brow furrowed. "Lo siento, señora. I'll try to be quicker." Karen's nostrils flared. "Quicker? I don't want you mopping at all while I'm trying to get to my meeting." She leaned in, her eyes narrowed. "And don't give me that lo siento crap. Speak English, for God's sake." Miguel's lips pressed into a thin line, but he remained silent, fearful of escalating the confrontation. "That's what I thought," Karen snapped. "Now get out of my way before I have you fired." As she stormed past him, Karen caught a glimpse of Miguel's hurt expression. Good. She didn't have time for the incompetence of the working class. They should just stay in their place and do their jobs without drawing attention to themselves. Fuming, Karen burst into the conference room, drawing several startled looks from her colleagues. "You're late, Karen," her boss, Sarah, said in a measured tone. "Sorry, Sarah. I was held up by one of your janitorial staff, who seems to think he can just block the hallways whenever he pleases." Karen shot a pointed glare at the other executives. Sarah's brow furrowed. "I'm sure Miguel was just doing his job. There's no need to. His job should be done quietly and efficiently, without disrupting the important work we have to do here," Karen interrupted. "I shouldn't have to dodge mops and buckets every time I need to get somewhere." The room fell silent, the other executives shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Karen could feel their disapproving stares, but she didn't care. She was the top sales representative. They needed her, even if they didn't like her abrasive personality. "Let's just get this meeting started," Sarah sighed, gesturing for everyone to take their seats. As the discussion unfolded, Karen barely listened, her mind still fixated on the audacity of that janitor. How dare he inconvenience her with his menial tasks? Didn't he realize who she was? By the time the meeting adjourned, Karen was seething. She stormed out of the conference room, determined to put Miguel in his place once and for all. As Karen stalked down the hallway, her eyes scanned the area for any sign of the offending janitor. She spotted Miguel methodically wiping down a bank of elevators, his brow furrowed in concentration. Marching up to him, Karen cleared her throat loudly, causing Miguel to jump in surprise. "Oh, it's you," Karen sneered. "I've been looking for you." Miguel straightened up, his grip tightening on the cleaning rag. "Senora, is there a problem?" "Yes, there is a problem," Karen snapped. "Your incompetence is disrupting the important work we do here. Do you have any idea how much time and money you waste when you block the hallways with your mopping?" Miguel's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Well," Karen demanded, "aren't you going to apologize?" Still, Miguel said nothing, his shoulders tensing as he tried to maintain his composure. "I'm waiting," Karen hissed, her voice dripping with disdain. Finally, Miguel looked up, his dark eyes smoldering with barely contained anger. "Senora, I was just doing my job. I did not mean to inconvenience you." "Oh, you didn't mean to." Karen's voice rose, drawing the attention of several passing employees. "Well, that's just not good enough. I expect better from the people who work in this building." Miguel's grip on the rag loosened, and it slipped from his hands, landing on the floor with a soft thud. "Senora, if I have offended you, I apologize. But I cannot control when or where I must mop the floors. It is my job to keep this building clean and safe for everyone who works here." Karen scoffed, her lips curling in disgust. "Safe? Ha! The only thing unsafe around here is your sloppy, incompetent work." She leaned in, her face mere inches from Miguel's. "Listen, and listen good. If I ever have to dodge your mop buckets again, I'll make sure you're out of a job faster than you can say, lo siento. With that, Karen turned on her heel and stalked away, leaving a stunned and increasingly irate Miguel in her wake. As Karen seethed in her office, her phone suddenly rang. Glancing at the caller ID, she was surprised to see Sarah's name displayed. Yes, Sarah, Karen answered, her tone clipped. Karen, I need to see you in my office. Now. Karen's brow furrowed. What is this about? Just come to my office, please, Sarah said, her voice stern. Grumbling under her breath, Karen made her way to the executive suite, her mind racing with possibilities. Had someone reported her outburst in the hallway? Surely they couldn't hold her accountable for putting an incompetent worker in his place. When she entered Sarah's office, she found the older woman seated behind her desk, her expression unreadable. Close the door and have a seat, Karen, Sarah instructed. Dread pooled in the pit of Karen's stomach as she complied, bracing herself for the inevitable confrontation. I've just had a very interesting conversation with Miguel, Sarah began, folding her hands on the desk. He's quite upset about the way you spoke to him earlier. Karen scoffed. That man is way too sensitive. I was simply trying to impress upon him the importance of his duties and how they affect the rest of us. By berating and threatening him. Sarah's brow arched. Karen, that kind of behavior is unacceptable. We pride ourselves on treating all of our employees, regardless of their position, with respect and dignity. Respect? Karen sneered. That janitor should be grateful I even acknowledged his existence. If he can't handle a little constructive criticism, then maybe he should find a different line of work. Sarah's eyes narrowed. That's enough, Karen. I won't tolerate this kind of attitude, especially towards our hardworking support staff. They are just as vital to this company's success as any executive. Karen opened her mouth to retort, but Sarah raised a hand, silencing her. I'm putting you on a 2-week suspension, effective immediately. Use that time to reflect on your behavior and how it affects those around you. If I hear of another incident like this, there will be more serious consequences. Karen's jaw dropped, her face flushing with outrage. You can't be serious. You're going to let that incompetent. This discussion is over, Karen, Sarah interjected, her tone leaving no room for argument. I suggest you collect your things and leave the premises. I'll have HR send you the details of your suspension. Seething with fury, Karen stormed out of the office, ignoring the pitying looks from her colleagues. How dare they side with that janitor over her? Didn't they understand the value she brought to the company? As she gathered her belongings, Karen made a silent vow to exact her revenge. Nobody humiliated her and got away with it, not even the boss. She would find a way to make them all pay. As Karen sulked in her apartment, a plan began to formulate in her mind. There was no way she was going to let Sarah and that meddlesome janitor get away with this. She needed allies, people who could help her regain the power and influence she had lost. Scrolling through her contacts, Karen paused on the name of one of her closest friends, Veronica. The two of them had been inseparable since college, bonding over their shared sense of entitlement and disdain for the lesser members of society. Quickly, Karen dialed Veronica's number, pacing the floor as it rang. Karen. What a pleasant surprise, Veronica answered, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I heard you got suspended. What happened? Karen launched into a detailed account of the incident, painting herself as the innocent victim of an overly sensitive janitor and an unjust boss. That's outrageous, Veronica exclaimed. You were just trying to do your job, and they punish you for it? It's so unfair. Exactly, Karen exclaimed, relief flooding through her. I need your help, Veronica. I can't let them get away with this. There has to be something we can do. Veronica was silent for a moment, and Karen could almost see the gears turning in her friend's mind. Well, I have a few connections in the legal world. Maybe we can explore some options to get your suspension overturned. Karen's heart leaped. That would be amazing. I can't stay away from work for 2 weeks. It'll ruin everything I've worked so hard for. Don't worry, Karen, Veronica reassured her. I'll make some calls and see what we can do. Just leave it to me. Thank you, Veronica, Karen breathed, a devious smile spreading across her face. I knew I could count on you. As she ended the call, Karen felt a renewed sense of purpose. Veronica was the perfect partner in crime, someone who shared her values and could help her regain the upper hand. With her friend's connections and Karen's own relentless drive, there was no way those fools at the office were going to get the last laugh. Settling into her armchair, Karen allowed herself a rare moment of pure, unadulterated glee. This was going to be fun. Over the next few days, Karen remained holed up in her apartment, waiting anxiously for news from Veronica. She couldn't stand the thought of those fools at the office carrying on without her, basking in their perceived victory. Finally, on the 3rd day of her suspension, Karen's phone buzzed with an incoming call from her friend. Veronica, what did you find out? She answered, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. Well, hello to you two, Karen, Veronica chuckled. I've been pulling some strings, and I think I've found a way to get your suspension overturned. Karen's heart raced. That's amazing. What's the plan? It's actually quite simple, Veronica explained. I have a friend who's a labor lawyer, and she thinks we can make a case for wrongful suspension. Apparently, there are some technicalities in the company's policy that we can exploit. Karen's brow furrowed. Technicalities? What do you mean? Well, from what I gathered, your boss, Sarah, didn't follow the proper disciplinary procedures before suspending you. Veronica continued. There's supposed to be a formal warning, a chance for you to improve, and then a suspension. All documented, of course. And they didn't do that? Karen asked, hope blossoming in her chest. Nope, Veronica confirmed. Sarah just handed down the suspension without warning. That's grounds for an appeal. Karen let out a triumphant laugh. Veronica, you're a genius. When can we get this process started? As soon as possible, her friend replied. My lawyer friend is already preparing the paperwork. All you need to do is come in for a meeting tomorrow to sign a few things. Perfect, Karen exclaimed. I'll be there. This is going to be so satisfying. As she ended the call, Karen felt a surge of vindication. Those fools at the office thought they could just push her around, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. With Veronica's help, she was going to make them pay for daring to cross her. Tomorrow, the tide would turn, and Karen would reclaim her rightful place at the top of the corporate hierarchy. Miguel and Sarah would be the ones apologizing when this was all over. The following day, Karen arrived at Veronica's friend's law office, a triumphant grin plastered across her face. This was going to be her moment of vindication. A chance to show those fools at the office who was really in charge. Veronica greeted her warmly, ushering her into a plush conference room where a stern-looking woman in a sharp pantsuit waited. Karen, this is Marisa, the labor lawyer I was telling you about, Veronica introduced. Karen extended her hand, her smile widening. It's a pleasure to meet you, Marisa. I'm so grateful for your help with this. Marisa shook her hand, her expression remaining neutral. Well, let's see what we can do. Have a seat and let's go over the details. As Marisa laid out the case, Karen felt her confidence growing. The lawyer outlined the various missteps the company had made in suspending her, and Karen could practically taste the sweet revenge that was about to unfold. So, what's the next step? Karen asked eagerly. Marisa paused, her brow furrowing slightly. Well, the next step would be to file an official appeal with the company's HR department. That will trigger a formal review process. Karen nodded, her grin widening. Excellent. Let's get started then. But as Marisa began to gather the necessary paperwork, her expression suddenly shifted. There is one thing I should mention, though, she said, her tone cautious. Karen's smile faltered. What is it? During my research, I came across some concerning information about your behavior towards the janitor, Miguel, Marisa explained. Apparently, you verbally accosted him in a rather aggressive manner. Karen's face flushed with indignation. That's completely irrelevant. The issue here is that my boss didn't follow proper procedures. Marisa held up a hand, silencing her. I understand, but the company may use that incident as justification for your suspension, regardless of the technical violations. Verbal abuse of employees is a serious offense that could undermine our case. Karen's eyes narrowed as she whirled on Veronica. Did you know about this? Veronica shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I may have glossed over a few of the details when I told you about this. Karen's jaw clenched, her hands balling into fists. You told me we had a slam-dunk case. Now you're telling me it might not work. Marisa interjected, her tone stern. Ms. Williams, I'm afraid I can't recommend moving forward with this appeal. The risks are simply too high, and I don't believe we have a strong enough case to overcome the misconduct allegations. Karen's world seemed to crumble around her. All her carefully crafted plans for revenge were slipping through her fingers. She had been so sure of her victory, and now it was all falling apart. This isn't fair, she cried, her voice rising in pitch. I'm the one who was wronged here, not that incompetent janitor. Marisa's expression hardened. I'm sorry, but I can't help you with this. My advice would be to accept the suspension and use the time to reflect on your behavior. Karen glared at Veronica, who averted her gaze, before storming out of the office, her dreams of vindication shattered. As the days of her suspension ticked by, Karen's anger only continued to simmer. She couldn't believe that her carefully laid plans had fallen apart so spectacularly. Veronica's betrayal stung, but the real source of her ire was the injustice she felt at the hands of her boss and that incompetent janitor. Pacing her apartment, Karen's mind raced with thoughts of retaliation. She couldn't let them get away with this. There had to be something she could do to make them pay. Finally, an idea struck her. If the legal route was closed off, then she would have to take matters into her own hands. With a malicious grin, Karen began to formulate a new plan. When the 2-week suspension was up, Karen returned to the office, her head held high. She could feel the curious stares of her colleagues as she strode through the lobby, but she ignored them, her focus laser-sharp. Marching straight to Sarah's office, Karen barged in without knocking, determined to assert her dominance. Karen, I wasn't expecting you back so soon, Sarah said, her brow furrowed. Well, here I am, Karen replied, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I've had plenty of time to reflect on my actions, and I want to apologize for my behavior towards Miguel. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. I appreciate that, Karen. That's very big of you. Yes, well, I realize that I may have been a bit too harsh, Karen continued, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I'd like to make it up to him, if that's possible. Sarah regarded her warily. What exactly did you have in mind? Karen flashed her a dazzling smile. I was thinking of taking him out to lunch, as a gesture of goodwill. It's the least I can do after the way I spoke to him. Skepticism crept into Sarah's expression, but she nodded slowly. All right, I suppose that would be a nice gesture. I'll let Miguel know you'd like to speak with him. Wonderful, Karen exclaimed, her heart racing with anticipation. I'll be sure to make it up to him. As Sarah summoned Miguel to the office, Karen couldn't suppress the devious grin that spread across her face. This was going to be even better than she had imagined. When Miguel arrived at Sarah's office, he was greeted by a seemingly contrite Karen, who flashed him a friendly smile. Miguel, thank you for coming, she said, her tone dripping with false sincerity. I wanted to apologize for the way I spoke to you the other day. It was unacceptable, and I hope you can forgive me. Miguel eyed her warily, his brow furrowed in suspicion. Signora, I'd appreciate the apology, but I must say I'm surprised. You were quite harsh with me before. Karen nodded, her expression solemn. I know, and I feel terrible about it. That's why I'd like to make it up to you. How about we go to lunch together? My treat. Miguel's eyes widened, and he glanced uncertainly at Sarah, who simply shrugged. Well, I suppose that would be all right, he conceded, still clearly on edge. As the two of them made their way to a nearby cafe, Karen maintained her friendly facade, engaging Miguel in polite conversation. But beneath the surface, a sinister plan was brewing. Once they were seated and had ordered their food, Karen's demeanor suddenly shifted. Leaning in, she fixed Miguel with a cold, calculating stare. You know, Miguel, I've been thinking a lot about our little encounter the other day, she murmured, her voice laced with venom. And I've come to the conclusion that I was right all along. Miguel's brow furrowed, his body tensing as if preparing for a confrontation. I'm not sure I understand, Senora. Karen's lips curled into a cruel smirk. Oh, I think you do. You and your little mopping antics have caused me nothing but trouble, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. Before Miguel could react, Karen suddenly upended her steaming hot coffee, dousing him in the scalding liquid. Miguel cried out in pain, jumping to his feet as the other patrons in the cave turned in shock. You see, Miguel, Karen hissed, I told you there would be consequences if you got in my way again. Now you know exactly what happens when you cross me. As Miguel frantically tried to wipe the coffee from his skin, Karen watched with a twisted sense of satisfaction. Her plan had worked perfectly. She had gotten her revenge, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. But as she basked in her victory, a sudden, sinking feeling washed over her. She turned to find Sarah standing there, her face a mask of horror and disgust. Karen Williams, you're fired, Sarah spat, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. Get out of this building, and don't you dare show your face here again. Karen's world crumbled around her as the full weight of her actions sank in. She had gone too far, and now she was paying the ultimate price. As she was escorted out of the building, she knew that her reign of entitlement and cruelty had finally come to an end.